Lessons, resilience, scaling, uncertainty. Probably, these words have been floating around ever since the so-called funding winter have set in. So, at ET Prime, we had done an analysis of the top line and the profit profit and loss of the hunted unicorns last year, just to understand the financial health of the unicorn landscape. So what we have seen was that 13 unicorns were profitable. Of course, these are all FY22 numbers, so a year old. 13 unicorns were profitable, 12 were very close to profitability, and then there is a dozen or so which are overseas domicile, therefore we don't have clear insight into their profit and loss numbers. But almost all of them are B2B enterprise startups with strong cash flows. So if we assume half of them fall into either of these brackets, so which would mean some 30, 35, 33 kind of startups, a third of Indian startups are profitable or on track to profits. They are self-sustainable. But as far as the rest is concerned, they might still need maybe a few rounds of capital more. So this is the time, and FY23 numbers have started trickling in. So it will make, it will give much clearer a picture as far as, so how the unicorn financials are showing up. So I'll go to Smita on, so because I have seen recently your co-founder has made a statement saying that, so you have, so you have brought down the losses in FY23, although the numbers are yet to be filed, but still the margins have improved and you have doubled your revenue. So congratulations on that. Maybe I think this is the theme that we see right now, that where everyone is trying to improve their financials, maybe given or taking all the growth ideas to the back seat. So could you just help us understand, how did you achieve this level of financial performance? Yeah.
No, so I think as context, two contexts, right? I think one is this funding frenzy, funding winter, these are cycles, and I think founders also understand that. It's important we embrace that it's just going to happen. It means and sometimes it's easier to raise money and sometimes slightly harder and takes a little longer. But I think the second context is that, especially if you're in a Soonicorns Summit and we're talking about unicorns, you are in a place where you have strong unit economics and you're scaling with that. And hence any funding is in the context of, till the time I hit a place where I'm generating enough excess cash to invest in my own business, how do I fund that? So, what we've done over the last year to double our, still grow 2x, and this year again we're going to clock 2x growth, and we're turning profitable in the next few months, is basically a plan that we'd made a while back. So it's not new. It is just that it's talked a little more about it. Now, when we became a unicorn, or around that time was the time when we had a very clear path of knowing that when we get to certain number of schools at that scale, we will generate enough cash, and that's what's happened. So I think my advice, or at least what I would share with everyone, is that it's important that we don't allow these external trends to really impact your business plans and your business fundamentals, because they are what they are, and it's important that you put your head down and focus on that. That's what we've done. So we've made our costs efficient, we've grown and invested internally in the right in the right opportunities, and we're just seeing a result of that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Ankush, so we are talking about lessons in resilience. So as far as ShareChat is concerned, so you have had an eventful year, so to say, be it people, organization, leadership. So I think, so you're best positioned to probably deliberate on how did you respond to such a situation. So maybe I think that's something that most of the startup ecosystem is now familiar with, this kind of a roller coaster ride. So you can.
Yeah, I think we've come, we are going through a massive change in the macros, right? Like the current pace of VC money being deployed in the ecosystem is about a third of its peak, about 2 years ago, right? So there is a very big change that's happening at the macro level. And all companies that will come out stronger from this would have one common trait, that they would have adapted really well to the current macro. And I think we set out, when we saw this coming, we're like, we need to adapt to this new reality, and the way we operate has to change. And just to give you some facts, right, our burn is down to a fifth of what it was, I don't know, 18 months ago, while our revenues are doubled in that time. So I think we've come a long way there, and I think as I think the narrative is that you have to cut costs, get efficiency, all of that. I think that's pretty much well known. I'm sure this group also knows. That's a very trivial gyan of sorts. What is non-trivial in this time is, despite this macro, what will you still keep investing in? And that will make a lot of difference when you sort of come out of this. So I think for us, we made sure that we keep investing behind our core. When I say core, one of the main things we do as a company is building the feed algorithm. That's the bread and butter of our business. How do you rank content? It takes a lot of investment into AI, building the team, cloud infrastructure, all of that. Despite everything that's happening around us, we made sure we keep investing behind it. And I think that's one thing that we truly believe will make a difference over long term. And while that is your core, everything around, you need to have a very, very clear mental map as a founder. What is your core bet? What is your high risk bet? What is something that you will live without in this macro? And as long as you have that mental map clear, I think everything else becomes easier. For example, what is the right size of the org to execute on this core? What is the capital requirement to fund the core, and then what is like beyond it? So I think when you have that clear mental map, all the other decisions become sort of a easier path forward. So I think that is what we have done. We have literally focused on the core, and everything else has had a very high bar for investment, both people and capital.
Okay, great. So Amit, so while I was doing some research for this session, so I came across, thanks to Abhishek again, so on Traction I picked that. So your head count has doubled in the last 2 years. Probably that's something that perfectly aligns with the final part of the theme today. That is scaling in the time of uncertainty. When most of the unicorn startups, we have seen massive amount of, say, downsizing. But here we see that, you have probably, managed to add people. So how was that made possible?
So basically, overall, we are aware about the theme, about funding winter, and about crisis and how to move to profitability. The way in which we have taken this approach is that, as the saying goes, never let a crisis go waste. So our objective is that anyway, the key objective of any business is to be profitable. Otherwise, why are you doing business in the first place? We have a network effect business, which basically, so what, as you know, what NoBroker does is we connect property owners with sellers, with tenants and sellers and buyers directly with each other without broker. And we have launched many ancillary services, right from packers and movers to home interiors. And we are making good money from there. So our network effect business basically is driven by 3 things for profitability. One is increase efficiency. Second is increase revenue. And the third one is increase margins because of increasing revenue, because the vendor gives you higher thing. So that is the path that we are following. Our team strength has increased, but it has remained constant for the past half a year because we think that now we have sufficient amount of people. So in the past 6 months, our revenue has grown 40% and our cost, our burn has reduced by 30%. So we are trying to make that proverbial Y in which you grow revenue and reduce the burn. So that's the path that we are following.
Okay. So Smita, this time I'll ask you a question on the sector. EdTech is probably in the focus for the lot of turmoil that we see. But so if we set the clock backwards. So we see that, so the pandemic offered a perfect tailwind, and 6 or 7 unicorns have come out during that time. Of course, the money was available that time. And then right now we see that, there is of course, so you're slightly differentiated, you are school centric compared to maybe, some of your peers. But, so what's your take on the, what's going on in the edtech in general? Yeah.
So see, I think one thing I will say that unfortunately in India, we've had a very narrow view of what's edtech. We are just at the, in the last 5 to 10 years, we just sort of started entering the space of using technology to power high quality education. And edtech is not B2C edtech, and it's not tuitions only. So the turmoil is in B2C edtech. And yes, B2C edtech had different opportunities when there was COVID. And as most people, especially those who are parents, would know, that it works only after a certain age, in a certain context. It does not work for young kids. I think all educators know that. So I would want to say that we must broaden the understanding and the definition of what is edtech. And school edtech is very much, or institutional edtech is very much a big game changer, because if you really compare India and institutions, whether they are schools or colleges or universities in India, as compared to the more evolved, countries, and when I say evolved countries, evolved education countries, we're still way behind. We don't have as much technology and technology-enabled learning opportunities or tools in our institutions like most of the other regions do. I mean, if I just even look at LATAM countries, 70 to 80% of schools are powered by technology, and in India it's like hardly 2% of them. Yeah. So I think if I see it from that point of view, if I again, the edtech media turmoil, or at least what media captures, is a very narrow view. I must say that yes, there is turmoil there, but that's not representative of the industry. Okay. So it's important that we understand that breadth. If I look at where the big opportunities are, I think clearly what we're seeing is that, direct to consumer online learning works very well above a certain age group, and we're seeing that in the way the companies are able to scale themselves. And fundamentally, I've always been a believer that for K-12, the only way for us to make any transformational impact is through school transformation. As I said, for 2 reasons. One is schools are where kids belong, and that's where, it's a social learning environment. Young children don't learn online very well. And the second thing is that Indian parents are not very rich. If they're anyway spending money to send their children to school, we better make that work for them. Getting them to spend money outside of school, in my mind, is a band-aid solution. Just because schools are bad, we need tuitions, but that's not a long-term solve to the fundamental problem. So I think that there is still massive opportunity. There is massive opportunity to grow, and there is massive opportunity to make impact. I mean, still I think high-quality education reaches, out of the 260 million school-going children in the country, it is reaching less than 10 million children. So we can see the landscape is still very much there for us.
Okay, yeah. Ankush, so the short video based social platforms also have seen its sort of its moment in the sun, and then maybe that's also there. Also we see some amount of, say, strategic action and consolidation maybe. So, and also the what's next for local homegrown social platforms as far as also the entertainment platforms.
Yeah, no, I think there has been a lot of shift in the industry. There's a lot of consolidation, a lot of players shutting down, which is, I think, a natural part of the curve, right? Like when you had maybe 50 players coming in competing, you were bound to have some people fold up at the end. I think we were very clear from the day one when we launched Moj that the hardest part of building this business is, can you build great feed ranking? Can you invest in world-class AI to make that happen? And just to give you an example, right, like last 12 or 18 months, as we have downsized the overall org, we have actually doubled our London AI team, because we know that is where we'll get long-term value. And that is why, despite everything that's happening to the domestic competition, we are holding strong on Moj and ShareChat, and Moj being a short video product. And we're still about a 150 million MAU product on Moj, growing well. So I think we have been very, very clear what it takes to build. And we're on that path. We will build a world-class short video product competing with the global giants. And we're now also in a much healthier state from a P&L point of view. For example, ShareChat is on its way to profitability, and that product of ours will be profitable in October this year. So we're like 2 months away. Moj being a newer product will probably take 6 more months. So now we know what it takes to scale DAUs and also to make that profitable. And we'll be the first profitable social media company coming out of India. And I think one of the very interesting phenomena is the last few weeks on India being a DAO farm. It was all on Twitter. And I think that's a very lazy sort of narrative, which is sort of now rubbing on Indian social media companies as well. To give you an example, I think the tweet was showing Facebook's ARPU being $5 in India and north of 100 in North America. Now guess what? The biggest cost to serve users is server cost. It takes $1 per year to serve. Okay. If your cost is $1 and you make $5 at a scale like a multi-100 million DAO scale, that's a massively profitable business. Okay. So it's a very lazy narrative to say that like India is a DAO farm. I think we are now way more confident than ever that we'll build a massively profitable company, the most capital efficient media serving engine for this country. Okay. And I think we're already seeing the signs of ShareChat getting profitable, then Moj getting profitable, our AI investment leading to more gains in time spent. So I think consolidation is good, that's happening in the industry. We remain as committed as ever, and you'll always find Moj to be a very strong competitor to all global short video companies in India.
Okay. So, Amit, so in March you raised a small amount of capital from Google, right? So, however small that is, that puts you in a very small group of companies which raised money in the funding window, especially among unicorns. So how did that come about, and and what does that entail? So that partnership.
Yeah, so most of the people know us from the core NoBroker business, which is property. But as I was mentioning, we are very large. We are India's largest packer and mover aggregator. We are India's largest painting aggregator. And we also have a business which is called NoBroker Hood, which competes with likes of Apartment and Apna Complex. And we have close to 15,000 societies that we are live in, which is around 30-35 lakh apartment flats. And Google basically approached us because they saw with their data that huge number of customers are using us multiple times. And while people will use NoBroker say once in a year, a consumer will approve entries on NoBroker Hood say 5-6 times a day. So NoBroker Hood is always in your mobile phone. So what basically Google approached us, and their ask was that how can Google ecosystem work more cohesively with NoBroker Hood ecosystem, and can there be deep integration partnerships that both the companies can do? And we were extremely cohesive and recipient to the idea that working with Google will expand our ecosystem also. Anyway, we work on Google Cloud, so we have relationship with Google. So I think that conversation happened across months, wherein we discuss in detail as to what type of integration we can do. So we're happy to have Google on our cap table.
Okay. So, sure. So I think, we have 5 minutes more. So any questions, so we can probably, to any of the panelists. Yes, please. Yeah. So can someone get the mic to the gentleman there?
Hello, panelists. I have a question regarding edtech. Okay, so moving beyond B2C, meaning what else do you see as a very good opportunity in edtech? Meaning, And second question is there any lesson to be learned from the Byju's fiasco?
Okay, so I think I can answer the first one. I think the second one, it's much better if the Byju's founders actually answer, because it's unfair for us to sit on the outside and have an opinion about it. But they know the company best. But as I mentioned, B2C edtech is, if you really think about the market, a small sliver of the market. Just imagine a student's life when the child is up until the age of 17 or 18. They are spending 6 to 7 hours of their day in a school or in a college. And that's where they're supposed to get great education. And then beyond that, it's only an hour a day or max 2 hours a day where they go and do something a lot more personalized. So I think B2C edtech is actually a very thin opportunity. Working with schools, you can call it a B2B model, but working with schools, working with colleges, institutions, universities, I think that is a significantly larger chunk of the market. And that's where huge impact lies, because your ability to actually make a very meaningful impact to a student's life is much higher when you're getting 6 hours with them as compared to the 1 hour when they're at home and they're actually distracted and they want to go spend time with their friends. I think overall, maybe on the edtech space, very similar to what some of the panelists said earlier, I think lessons to be learned for anyone, and this is again not in the context of any one company, it's always a reminder for all of us that when you're building companies, you have to understand that unit economics, governance, all these things are basic table stakes in how you think about it, and you have to ensure that while you're scaling, you're giving the due importance to governance and ensuring that you're investing the time and money behind it within your company so that your foundation is strong. Again, this is not a comment on any company. I'm sure they've done it, and all companies go through their own sort of difficult periods. Unfortunately, some of it becomes a lot more public. So I empathize with founders who have to even deal with that while they're dealing with the realities of building their own business. So yeah.
Okay, one more.
So I have the mic.
Okay, yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I have another question with the edtech only. So with the NEP around and a vast change in syllabus, so how you are coping with it? What are the plans? How long you plan to take to implement NEP? In that direction, that NCF is just out. So are you planning to go this year or next year in that sense? Second, when we talk about students' engagement, and you talked about edtech, and you talked that edtech in India is not that pervasive. Just to extend 1 to 2%. So what are the key factors and how we can include more technology in day-to-day life of the students?
Okay. So first one, I think NEP is a very refreshing change and a very refreshing direction that the government is taking. If I talk about us, because your question was specifically on LEAD, the reason why we started LEAD 10 years back was basically we were seeing a massive gap in teaching approaches and also teaching standards in India as compared to what was happening globally. And hence what LEAD brought with the ed part of the tech, so for us, tech is the technology actually democratizes it and allows us to reach out to many people. But the real thing that we're transforming in classrooms is education. We have been doing all the things that now finally NEP is talking about. So to be very honest, NEP and NCF is massive vindication for our teams. And we are not having to change curriculums, in fact, or improve, because we've been doing it for many years. We're in a place now where we are seeing much better adoption, because schools are now realizing that for them to be NEP compliant, if they partner with people like us, they can be NEP compliant in a matter of days. Like you sign up, in 15 days you have LEAD in your classroom set up, and you are NEP compliant. So this is actually, wind beneath our wings, I must say. And in fact, I've also been trying to talk to a lot of different state governments that we can actually partner with you to implement NEP much faster in the, in the government schools. So I think that's my take on NEP. On the second question that you asked, see, engagement, student engagement is a tool or a way to get to high student outcomes. If a child is not even interested in learning, they're not going to learn anything. And student engagement is built, again, it's different for different age groups, but it is built in a social environment with multimodal learning. it is, what I mean by multimodal is that there is kinesthetic and there is technology in the classroom. So at least the way we've made a big shift is move classrooms away from textbook-based rote learning to multimodal classroom. Like, how do you bring technology inside the classroom? How do you bring interactivity and kinesthetic movement in the classroom for students to learn? I think that, as we make that more prevalent across the countries, which is, by the way, I mean, schools in our country, which is exactly what NEP talks about, we'll go a really, really long way in improving student outcomes.
Okay, so with that, so maybe the other questions we will take offline. So with that, this session comes to an end. Thank you, everyone.